hesitate using labels and words for energy when I do my readings, or I'll say all different things that they could be, like angels, guides, ancestors, God, source. But even then, I feel weird about that. I feel triggered about using that because I don't think there's one label. We all believe in different things for different reasons. And as I was thinking about that, I started thinking about my life and how I was able to gain the perspective of not saying, I know it's not just black and white. There's so many different pathways, there's so many different areas, and so many different ways of understanding God, understanding energy, understanding source, understanding unconditional love, because that's really what it is. It's remembering unconditional love of just being and of just being accepted as the energy that you are. So I started thinking about how growing up, I kind of always put myself in enemy territory. I was raised by a very liberal family. My dad was a dance teacher. He stood up at universities. He stood up for student rights. And since I can remember, he always kind of fought for justice. And then my mom, she was a strong, independent woman that fights for women rights, and is very opinionated, but also very loving. And they didn't raise me in any kind of religion, and that's because they were raised to believe a certain thing, and they carried a lot of shame from that. I had a very fluid, free childhood, not a lot of structure. My older sister is hilarious. She says that she remembers dad and mom off in their world doing their own thing, and I'm over here dancing, dressed up as a genie as a little girl, just flowing. And she's like, well, Ariel, when do you think we're gonna eat next? And I'm like, I don't know, whenever. And so that's kind of my childhood, at least my early childhood, and things shift as they always do. And I found myself, as I started to grow up, being attracted to the more structured, the more conservative. I dated more conservative men who kind of wanted to control that free energy that I had. And also, I feel like, I don't know if it was me working through shame, but I was put in situations where I was able to gain their perspective and respect it, but also I had to learn not to abandon mine, the core of mine, because I love that part of me. I love that free flowing part of me. It's almost like I was on this end, they were on that end, and I found balance. And most of the time, I don't know if they did, but we parted ways when they couldn't. It got me thinking to angels and why that word I know triggers people, especially, just different people. I'm putting myself out there, not for just one category to see me, but everyone can see me if I show up on your For You page. And I know angels, to me, in the past would have triggered some kind of religious trauma, because my experience with people and religion a while ago was judgment. I felt like they would judge me for not going to church on a Sunday. They would judge me for wanting to be a free spirit. And I just felt judged because I wasn't part of a religion, and that's not necessarily true. Some of the most beautiful people, loving people I've ever met are part of religions and that kind of stuff, and also some of the most judgmental. Some people are mystics and they claim to be, not judgmental, but they're really judgmental. I'm just gonna say it. Okay, I'm putting that out there. We see it all the time on social media. It's like an ego thing. It's like we're just gonna get that out of the way. But it made me think of this story. So I ended up really young marrying someone who was Catholic, and so I went through a program called RCIA, which is it's I don't know how many months, I can't remember. I was 22, 23 or whatever. And it was every Monday we would go to the church's basement and take a class with other people. I had to have a sponsor. My husband at the time sponsored me. We're no longer married, and it's not because of that. It's just we all grow apart. Okay, we're gonna just leave it at that. We're co-parenting our kids together, and it's working out fine. But anyway, I was really young, and I was obviously trying to be the good wife. I went the opposite. I am going to be the Martha Stewart, or I'm gonna be. And I was a mom at the time too, and I was new, and I was I am going to really just go all in and be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go through this RCIA, and I'm going to learn about Catholicism, which is the religion that my father was raised in that kind of traumatized him. But he went to Catholic school in the 60s where the nuns still hit you and shit. So I would go in there, and it just felt, to me, it felt surface level and it felt fake. But I also was trying to be open-minded, because I know, coming from this end, that I could have a little bit of a snobby view towards someone on that end. And so I would try to be open-minded. And there were times where I was just like, oh gosh, but I'll never forget sitting in this class, and I really liked the priest. He was very funny. He was very dry, and would call people out, and he was very, to me, open-minded. I was in Ohio, West Virginia border, that we had moved around a lot. And so, you can imagine someone coming from like a very openly experienced all different types of lives going into a town that maybe doesn't, you run into kind of, I call them the scary types, the ones that don't believe that everyone should have equal rights. Okay. The dangerous type is what I think of them as, because you can have a point of view, but if you're trying to control people because of your beliefs, that's an issue. And that's what I have a problem with. That's the thing that I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with your religion. I have a problem if you want to take away people's free will and right to live the way they choose to live that's not hurting anyone else. That's the danger for me when it comes to any kind of religion. I think that's messed up. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and I remember this guy goes, "What do you think about the gays?" And I remember just going, oh God, oh God, oh God, I can't get through this. I can't do this. I'm going to quit. I'm not going. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And this was like a heavy set guy. And I look up and see how the priest is going to respond. And the priest looks at him and he says, you can say it's a sin, but so is gluttony. And he looks at the guy who's really overweight, and he's like, sin is a sin, right? Who are you to judge? And I just remember looking at him and going, okay, I can continue learning from this man. So I guess the point of this story is to talk about religious trauma. And religious trauma doesn't come from the ideas that come out of religion. It comes from who's teaching it and who's interpreting it. So there are some really beautiful ideas in the Catholic Church. I really connected with the energy of Mother Mary, who I still connect with now. I connect with archangels. I'm going to say it. They guide me, and it's beautiful. But years ago, if I would have seen this video of me talking about that, I would be creeped out by that. So I get that. I'm saying this because labels aren't needed. It's the energy and it's the interpretation of the messages that are coming through that are important, because the messages that come through from people that speak these messages, it's how they're interpreting them that gets the idea through. And I think that's what I'm coming to terms with, that I can call it angels, and not everyone's going to listen to the message. But if that triggers someone, maybe they stay and they say, okay, well, I do resonate with that part, but I don't resonate with that. Sometimes when you're put in enemy lines, it's to understand that not everyone's your enemy, and it's not always black and white, and not every pathway to the truth is the same. There's not one way there. But the one hard line that I will draw is taking away people's rights, taking away their free will. I think that's the biggest law, universal law you can break. Aside from that, if you're not doing that, if you're not harming anyone, do you and be you. And spread your light the way that you see it, okay? Because that's what's important here. And when you receive the message, it's all about interpretation. Same with reading the Bible. You can read it in a light, loving way, or you can read it in a way to control. And that's the message. It's about finding even that balance and acceptance of other perspectives, because that's why we're here. That's it.